The earth trembles softly under the weight of centuries. The winds whisper secrets along the banks of the Vistula River. Here in the heart of Poland, history has been written not just in stone and parchment, but in the very molecules of life. The Slavs, we are told, arrived like a rising tide in the early medieval centuries, sweeping across Eastern Europe, bringing new languages, new culture, and new blood. Yet, when scientists unearthed the graves of Roman-era women buried along these ancient shores, something remarkable emerged from the silence of the bones. DNA, the ultimate witness, spoke in a voice older than any chronicle. The maternal genetic code, haplogroups like H5, H501, N1AAA, was identical to that of modern Polish women. 3,000 years of continuity stretched like an invisible thread through time. The mothers never left. They remained, their blood unbroken, silently observing the tides of history. But the men, their story, told something else entirely. This is the paradox that shakes the foundations of what we thought we knew. While the textbooks speak of migrations, of the Slavic expansion in the 5th and 6th centuries, the maternal DNA remained unwavering. It did not shift, it did not yield. Meanwhile, the Y chromosomes, passed from father to son, tell of a dramatic upheaval, a shift from haplogroup I1, the Northern European lineages of Iron Age men, to R1A, specifically subclades M458 and Z280, dominating the Middle Ages. This is not merely a cultural imprint. This is genetic replacement, subtle yet profound, a silent revolution written in our chromosomes. Imagine standing in a lab, pale light reflecting off steel surfaces, as a scientist carefully lifts a fragment of bone from the dust of centuries. Each strand of DNA is sequenced, read like a letter from the past. And as the code emerges, the narrative fractures. Mothers remained, fathers arrived, and in their union a new identity was forged. It was not conquest in the classical sense. There are no mass graves, no armies sweeping through villages, but something deeper: integration, intermarriage. The women of the land giving birth to children who carried new Y chromosomes, new languages, new customs. By 2021, a landmark study examined 457 skeletons from 27 cemeteries across Poland. The results were astonishing. Iron Age males bore the old Northern European I1 lineages. Centuries later, middle-aged men overwhelmingly carried R1A, a complete turnover of paternal ancestry. Mothers remained, fathers arrived, and in this hidden choreography, Slavic culture emerged, not through force, but through connection, through bloodlines entwined across generations. And yet a deeper mystery persisted. Who were these men? Where did they come from? Why did they appear precisely when the chronicles described the Slavic migrations? And why did they overwrite the male genetic landscape so thoroughly? To follow their trail, we journey not just through cemeteries and labs, but across the continent, tracing rivers, forests, and plains. R1A M458, one of the dominant subclades in Polish men today, was long thought to originate east, perhaps carried by warriors, nomads, migrants. But a 2022 phylogenetic analysis overturned that assumption. The lineage traces back nearly 11,000 years, with an epicenter right in modern Poland. These men were not outsiders. They were returning sons of a forgotten fatherland, their blood rooted in the soil they now reclaimed. Even deeper, subclade R1A-Z280, the distinctly West Slavic lineage, peaks in Poland and Slovakia, coiling along the Vistula and Odra rivers. The genetic patterns do not radiate outward, they coil inward, like roots of a tree long forgotten. The men labeled as migrants may in truth have been returning home. And yet, despite millennia of continuity, the paternal lineages had vanished, only to surge back into dominance in the early medieval age. What force swept through, breaking continuity, displacing men while leaving the women intact? Archaeogenetics offers clues. Bronze Age and Iron Age cultures, Lusatian, Przeworsk, and Wielbar, show strong presence of R1A lineages long before the Slavs were named. These were local tribes, Proto-Slavic perhaps in language, but undeniably homegrown. And yet history spoke of waves, invasions, tides of strangers crossing the Danube. The DNA tells a more complex story. The flood of Slavs may have been a flood of language, of culture, of identity, not a wholesale migration of people. Consider a woman born into an Iron Age tribe, speaking a language lost to time, living along the banks of the Vistula. She marries a man who identifies as Slavic, and her children inherit his Y chromosome, his name, his tongue. But the mitochondria, the matrilineal DNA, carries her story unbroken. Every ceremony, every hearth, every whispered tale carries the memory of her ancestors. Her voice, encoded in DNA, survived the tides of cultural upheaval. The spread of Slavic language and culture was not instantaneous. Linguists now believe that Proto-Slavic emerged locally somewhere between the Odra and the Dniester rivers, between 1500 BCE and 500 CE, before exploding across the continent. Like pollen carried by the wind, language spread without armies. Dominant elites, power vacuums, and shifting empires created fertile ground. DNA confirms it. Genome-wide sequencing of over 500 ancient individuals across Central Europe shows continuity in the maternal lines, subtle shifts in the paternal, and a tapestry of culture overlaying an enduring biological foundation. Now take the Balkans. At first glance, the story seems familiar. Slavic languages, Slavic culture, a clear expansion. Yet the genes tell a subtler story. Paternal lineages shift, maternal lines blend, the result a population that speaks Slavic but retains distinct Balkan ancestry. DNA uncovers integration, admixture, the negotiation of identity between newcomers and the rooted populations. It is the mirror of the Polish story, but here the balance tilts toward absorption rather than continuity. The blood remembers what the tongue forgets.
And yet, the maternal lines were not only stable, they were extraordinary in their persistence. Haplogroups H5A1, U5, N1A1A, carried through millennia, anchored the Polish population in a remarkable continuity. Mothers who lit fires in Bronze Age huts watched Slavic dialects emerge, witnessed the rise of dynasties, survived medieval upheavals, and even endured the cataclysm of modern war. In 1945, borders shifted, populations were uprooted, entire communities displaced. Millions of lives were rearranged, and with them, the DNA shifted. And then there is the philosophical question, the pulse beneath the science. What is identity? When your culture comes from one source, your mother's from another, and your fathers arrive speaking something new, who are you? Is identity found in the blood, or in the stories passed along the hearth? The Slavic migration was not merely a movement of people, it was a remaking of memory, a dialogue between past and present encoded in our DNA. Archaeogenetic studies illuminate the depth of this dialogue. In 2014, mitochondrial DNA analyses of Roman and early medieval cemeteries showed continuity unmatched elsewhere in Central Europe. In 2023, genome-wide sequencing of over 200 individuals from prehistoric and wheelbarrow cultures revealed overwhelming genetic continuity with modern Poles. The DNA contradicted the labels imposed by 19th century scholarship. These were not Germanic invaders, they were local Proto-Slavic populations whose Y chromosomes re-emerged centuries later, carrying forward a legacy that had never truly left. Even the Bronze Age tells the story. Lusatian culture, once thought pre-Slavic, bears the same R1a lineages carried by modern Slavic men. These were communities of farmers, warriors, and artisans. They buried their dead with handmade ceramics, bronze ornaments, and fire rituals, leaving clues to identity far deeper than language or written record. The Slavs, when first chronicled in the 6th century, were not sudden arrivals. They were the culmination of a long, layered history. And yet, history is never simple. Wars, empires, forced migrations, and partitions have reshaped populations, but certain threads remain unbroken. R1a, the paternal signature of West Slavs, persists as a genetic watermark, a trace of continuity surviving invasions, resettlements, and even the cataclysm of modern war. Polish men today carry it from Moravia to Silesia, a quiet testament to survival. The chromosomes themselves become storytellers, whispering secrets of Bronze Age warriors, medieval peasants, and resistance fighters who once defended the soil beneath their feet. This is the moment to pause and reflect on what it means to trace ancestry through DNA. It is not merely science, it is archaeology, anthropology, history, and philosophy entwined. It is to hold in your hands the strands of life that have endured millennia. And as you watch this story unfold, consider the power of discovery. Subscribe, follow, and join the journey into the hidden truths encoded in our genes. As centuries pass, as borders shift, as languages rise and fall, one truth endures. Identity is forged not in a single moment, but in 1,000 choices, alliances, and unions across generations. The Slavs, as they emerge from the mists of history, are a testament to that endurance. The early Slavs were a fusion, mothers rooted in the soil, fathers returning or arriving, cultures intertwining, identities forming. DNA confirms the paradox. Populations change without moving, cultures shift without replacing, and yet the essence of ancestry persists. In laboratories from Krakow to Copenhagen, in cemeteries from the Roman Iron Age to the early medieval period, the genetic record is clear. Maternal continuity, paternal shifts, cultural synthesis. Autosome data, Y chromosome lineages, mitochondrial DNA, all converge to tell the story of survival, adaptation, and identity. The Slavic migrations, long portrayed as sudden and sweeping, reveal themselves instead as nuanced, gradual, and profoundly human. As the sun sets along the Vistula, casting long shadows over fields once tilled by ancestors, one realizes the truth is never simple. It is in the threads of DNA, the artifacts left behind, the languages that survive centuries. To understand who we are, we must listen to both the whispers of the past and the evidence of our genes. And here, in the convergence of science and story, we discover the power of continuity, the resilience of identity, and the enduring legacy of the human journey. The story is far from over. Across Europe, from the Carpathians to the Balkans, new studies continue to uncover the layers of ancestry, revealing the entanglement of culture and blood, of migration and memory. Each genome sequenced is a window into the past, a key unlocking the mystery of who we are. And as we continue to unravel these threads, one question remains at the heart of the inquiry. Identity is more than a place, more than a language, more than a surname. It is the sum of survival, adaptation, and the stories that our ancestors embedded in our very cells. Join us as we continue this journey into the DNA of nations, into the hidden histories of peoples, into the quiet persistence of mothers, the return of fathers, and the fusion that forged the Slavs. Subscribe to witness the ongoing revelations, to follow the footsteps of those who came before, and to uncover the secrets waiting beneath the soil, the stones, and the strands of DNA that define us all.